We appreciate every single one of you. We'd love to know, what part of the world are you watching from right now? Let us know in the comments. Now, let's dive into today's story. Ronald Terry stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his lakeside home, watching the September sunset paint streaks of orange across Lake Washington. The sound of piano music drifted up from the living room, Emma practicing Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major, the piece she'd chosen for her Juilliard audition. He checked his watch, 6:45 p.m. Right on schedule, as always. "Dad, come look at this." Sophie's voice carried from her art room, where she'd been working on her latest masterpiece. Ronald smiled, noting how his youngest had inherited her mother's commanding presence. He found Sophie surrounded by scattered pencils and paint tubes, her curly brown hair tied back in a messy bun. She held up a canvas, beaming with pride. The watercolor captured their family's Sunday breakfast scene with surprising detail, Jason stuffing pancakes into his mouth, Emma rolling her eyes at her brother's antics, and Katrina's perfectly manicured hand reaching for the coffee pot. "That's incredible, sweetheart," Ronald said, genuinely impressed. "You've really captured Jason's hamster cheek moment." Sophie giggled. "Mom says I should enter it in the school art fair." "You absolutely should." He ruffled her hair, careful not to disturb her concentration as she returned to adding final touches. Downstairs, the piano music stopped, replaced by the sound of cleats being dropped in the mudroom. "Dad," Jason called out, "you're still coming to practice tonight, right? Coach Matthews wants to go over the new formation." Ronald checked his phone. 3 unread emails from work, all marked urgent. Arnold Brock, his senior developer, needed approval on the new software patch before tomorrow's release. It could easily take hours to review. "Wouldn't miss it, champ," he called back. The emails could wait. He'd learned long ago that these moments, Sophie's paintings, Emma's recitals, Jason's soccer games, were the real measure of success. In the kitchen, Katrina was arranging fresh-cut peonies in a crystal vase, her movements graceful and deliberate. Even in yoga pants and a casual sweater, she carried herself with the poise of her modeling days. "Hannah called," she said, referring to Arnold's wife. "They want us to join them for dinner at Canlis on Friday. I told her we'd love to." "Sounds perfect." Ronald wrapped his arms around her waist from behind, breathing in her familiar Jo Malone perfume. "Though I thought you had that client meeting in London next week?" "Oh, that's not until Thursday." Katrina's hands stilled momentarily on the flowers. "I'll be back Sunday evening. The Ashworth project is too important to pass up." Emma's voice floated in from the living room. "Mom, did you call about the pianist for the charity gala?" "Mrs. Hayes said they still haven't confirmed anyone." "I'll handle it tomorrow, darling." Katrina extracted herself from Ronald's embrace, moving to adjust a photo on the wall, their family portrait from last Christmas, everyone color-coordinated in winter whites and burgundy. "Speaking of which, Ronald, don't forget we need to pick up your new tuxedo for the museum event." The evening settled into its familiar rhythm. Jason grabbed his soccer gear, Emma returned to her piano practice, and Sophie emerged from her art room with paint-stained fingers. Ronald watched them all, his chest swelling with pride. He'd worked hard for this life. The lakeside house in Madison Park, private school tuitions at Lakeside School, summer vacations in the south of France. Every pressure-filled day at work felt worth it when he came home to this. Later that night, as he reviewed code in his home office, Ronald overheard Arnold's voice from his phone speaker. "Man, you've got it all figured out. Perfect wife, perfect kids, perfect house. Some guys have all the luck." Ronald glanced at the family photo on his desk, taken during their sailing trip to Greece last summer. "Not luck, Arnold. Just knew what I wanted and worked for it." Still, Katrina's something else. Hannah's always saying how she manages everything so effortlessly. The charity boards, the interior design business, the kids' schedules. Like some kind of superwoman. "She is pretty amazing," Ronald agreed, thinking of how seamlessly their lives fit together. 18 years of marriage had only made them stronger, more in sync. He'd built exactly the life he dreamed of, surrounded by the people he loved most in the world. Through his office window, he could see Sophie and Jason in the backyard, arguing over whose turn it was to take out the recycling. Emma sat on the patio, headphones on, marking up her sheet music. Katrina moved through the kitchen, phone to her ear, probably coordinating another charity event or design consultation. Perfect wasn't a word Ronald used lightly, but looking at his family, he couldn't think of a better one. The Seattle Art Museum's annual charity gala always drew the city's elite, and this year was no exception. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over the marble floors as Seattle's wealthy and powerful mingled among priceless artworks. Ronald adjusted his bow tie, scanning the crowd for Katrina, who disappeared to powder her nose 20 minutes ago. Ronald. Hannah Hayes appeared at his elbow, champagne flute in hand. Have you seen the new modern art installation? It's absolutely fascinating. Arnold's been staring at it for 10 minutes, trying to figure out if it's upside down. He laughed, grateful for the familiar face. Sounds like Arnold. He does the same thing with bug reports. Oh, before I forget, tell Katrina the London trip sounds divine. Though I don't know how she manages so many international clients. Seems like she's there every other month lately. Ronald's hand stilled on his champagne glass. London? She just got back last week. Hannah's perfectly shaped eyebrows rose slightly. Really? Because Margaret Whitman swears she saw her at the Ritz with some silver-haired gentleman last month. Very cozy, apparently. She must have noticed something in Ronald's expression because she quickly added, though you know Margaret. She's probably confused. All these charity events blur together. Before Ronald could respond, he caught fragments of conversation from two women behind a nearby sculpture. Third time this quarter, always at the Ritz. Bernard something or other. Tech industry, I think. Quite handsome for his age. Distinguished. The voices faded as the women moved away, leaving Ronald with an uncomfortable weight in his stomach. He pulled out his phone, scrolling through Katrina's recent travel dates. The design consultations had indeed become more frequent. London, Paris, back to London. Darling, there you are. Katrina's voice cut through his thoughts. She appeared in a shimmer of emerald silk, her blonde hair elegantly swept up. The Hendersons want us to see their new yacht next weekend. I said we'd love to. Ronald studied his wife's face, searching for, what? Some sign of deception? But Katrina merely smiled, her lipstick perfect, her blue eyes clear and bright. Another London trip coming up? He asked casually. Yes. The Ashworths are redesigning their entire Mayfair townhouse. Could be my biggest project yet. She squeezed his arm. Oh look, there's Emma. Doesn't she look beautiful? Their daughter stood across the room in a midnight blue gown, looking far older than her 17 years as she chatted with her piano instructor. But something was off. Emma's shoulders were tense, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. When she caught sight of her parents, she quickly looked away. Later that week, Ronald noticed Emma hunched over her laptop at the kitchen island, rapid-firing text messages. Everything okay? Sweetheart? He asked, reaching for the coffee pot. Emma jumped, slamming the laptop shut. Fine. Just college application stuff. She gathered her things quickly, avoiding his eyes. I have to practice. Big recital coming up. Ronald watched her hurry away, remembering how she'd been equally evasive at the gala. His daughter, who used to tell him everything, now seemed to be carrying her own secrets. That evening, he tried broaching the subject with Katrina. Have you noticed Emma acting differently lately? She seems withdrawn. Katrina was sorting through fabric swatches at her desk, her reading glasses perched on her nose. She's 17, Ronald. It's normal to be moody. College applications are stressful. Maybe we should talk to her. Don't hover, darling. She'll come to us if she needs to. Katrina's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, then quickly turned it face down. I need to finish these client presentations before my flight tomorrow. Ronald lingered in the doorway, watching his wife work. The woman he'd married 18 years ago, who'd given him 3 beautiful children and built this perfect life with him. Yet for the first time, he felt a subtle shift, like the first hairline crack in a flawless face, invisible unless you knew exactly where to look. The house settled into its nighttime quiet, broken only by the soft hum of Ronald's laptop as he reviewed quarterly reports in his home office. The clock on his desk read 11:23 p.m. He rubbed his tired eyes, thinking of heading to bed, when voices drifted through the air vent connecting to Emma's room above. Can't keep lying to him, Emma's voice, thick with emotion. It's not fair. Life isn't fair, sweetie. Katrina's tone was matter-of-fact, almost cold. Your real dad's a millionaire in London. We're just using this fool until your trust fund matures. Ronald's blood turned to ice. He sat perfectly still, straining to hear every word. Mom, how could you do this to Dad? He loves us. Emma's voice cracked. All of us. He's at every recital, every game, every art show. He's the one who... Love doesn't pay for the life we deserve, sweetie. Bernard Bliss can give us everything we've ever wanted. Just a few more months. And then what? We just leave? Like none of this mattered. Don't be dramatic, Emma. I've planned this for years. The trust funds are set up. The accounts are ready. Once you turn 18. What about Jason and Sophie? A pause. They're Bernard's too, of course. All three of you. Ronald was just convenient. A good provider while we waited. Ronald's hands gripped the edge of his desk, knuckles white. 18 years. 3 children. Every memory, every moment, all built on lies. I won't do it. Emma's voice was stronger now. I won't leave Dad. And I won't let you take Jason and Sophie either. You don't have a choice, darling. Everything's arranged. Bernard's lawyers have handled all the details. Ronald won't know what hit him. Footsteps crossed the floor above, followed by the soft click of Emma's door closing. Ronald sat in the darkness, his world unraveling thread by thread. The perfect family portrait shattered, revealing an ugly truth beneath. His phone lit up with a text from Katrina. Coming to bed soon? Early flight tomorrow. Ronald stared at the message, remembering every business trip, every late-night call, every evasive answer about her growing client list in London. How long had he been living this lie? How had he not seen it? Emma's piano music started softly, Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata, the piece she played when upset. The same piece she performed at her first recital, with Ronald sitting front row, bursting with pride. Not her father. Never her father. He opened his laptop again, this time not to review reports. Instead, he typed, Pete Casey investigator into the search bar. His old college roommate had gone into private investigation. They hadn't spoken in years, but the music upstairs changed to something darker, more turbulent. Ronald began composing an email, his fingers steady despite the storm raging inside him. He would not confront Katrina. Not yet. First, he needed proof. Needed to understand the full scope of her deception. In the hallway, he heard Sophie's door open, followed by her sleepy voice. Dad, is that you working late again? Ronald swallowed hard, forcing his voice to remain normal. Just finishing up, sweetheart. Go back to bed. Love you, Dad. Each word was a knife to his heart. Love you too, Sophie. He waited until her door closed before opening his bottom desk drawer. Inside lay a family photo album. He flipped through pages of birthdays, holidays, vacations, searching faces for traces of another man. A British tech mogul named Bernard Bliss. The stranger who had apparently fathered his children. The piano music stopped abruptly. Through the vent came the sound of muffled crying. Ronald's hand hovered over his phone, wanting desperately to go comfort his daughter. Not his daughter, Emma. But he couldn't. Not without revealing what he knew. Instead, he began making lists. Bank accounts. Assets. Lawyers. If Katrina thought she had planned everything perfectly, she was about to learn otherwise. Ronald Terry hadn't built a successful career in tech by being naive or unprepared. Let her fly to London tomorrow. Let her think her secret was safe. He had work to do. The business card was worn at the edges, pulled from the depths of Ronald's desk drawer where it had sat for nearly 2 decades. Pete Casey's name was still clear, though the phone number had faded. Ronald dialed, his office door locked, blinds drawn against the Seattle drizzle. Casey Investigations. The voice was gruffer than Ronald remembered from their college days. Pete, it's Ronald Terry. From Washington State. A pause. Holy shit. Terry? The computer genius who saved my ass in calculus? The same. Ronald's fingers drummed against his desk. I need your help, Pete. Quietly. Those are usually the expensive ones. Pete's tone shifted from friendly to professional. What kind of help? Ronald outlined the situation in clinical terms, as if describing someone else's life falling apart. When he finished, the silence stretched. Jesus, Ron. Pete whistled low. You're sure about this? I heard it myself, but I need proof. Bank records, travel history, everything you can find on a Bernard Bliss in London. Tech industry. And the kids? Ronald's hand tightened on the phone. I need DNA tests. Discreet ones. There are services for that. I'll send you the details. But Ron, are you sure you want to know? The family photo on his desk caught Ronald's eye. Sophie's 12th birthday party last month. She had his nose, he'd always thought. Or maybe he just wanted to see it there. I need to know everything, Pete. Every account, every meeting, every lie. Whatever it costs. I'll start today. But Ron, get a lawyer. A good one. After hanging up, Ronald opened his browser, typing home DNA testing kits into the search bar. The results seemed endless. Ancestry tests, health profiles, paternity confirmation. His cursor hovered over the Order Now button. A knock at his office door made him quickly close the tab. Come in. Arnold Brock stuck his head in. Hey, boss. Hannah wanted me to remind you about dinner Friday. She's making that salmon you like. Ronald forced a smile. Looking forward to it. Everything okay? You seem fine. Just reviewing quarterly projections. After Arnold left, Ronald reopened the DNA test website. 3 kits ordered. Rush delivery. He'd need a plan to collect the samples without raising suspicion. That evening, he called a family meeting in the kitchen. I've been thinking about our family medical history, he began, watching their faces carefully. My doctor suggested getting comprehensive health profiles done. For all of us. Is everything okay? Jason looked up from his physics homework, concern creasing his forehead. Just being proactive. Ronald pulled out the testing kits he'd hidden in his briefcase. It's simple, just a cheek swab. Cool. Sophie grabbed one of the packages. Like on CSI. Only Emma remained silent, studying the test kit with an unreadable expression. When she finally met Ronald's eyes, there was something like understanding there. Or maybe fear. Meanwhile, Pete's investigation was yielding results. Bernard Bliss wasn't hard to find, CEO of a British software company, regular on London's social circuit. Photos showed a tall man with silver hair, designer suits, and a practiced smile. The kind of smile that belonged on magazine covers. Found something interesting, Pete reported over a secured line. Regular transfers from a Cayman Islands account to one in Katrina's name. Started 17 years ago, right after Emma was born. Ronald's stomach churned. How much? Enough to live very comfortably. But here's the kicker. There are 3 trust funds set up through a private Swiss bank, all scheduled to mature on Emma's 18th birthday. 6 months from now. Got it in one. Want me to keep digging? Ronald thought of Katrina's words. Just a few more months. Everything, Pete. I want everything. The DNA samples were easier to collect than he'd expected. A family dinner, water glasses carefully preserved. Labels, packaging, overnight shipping. Now came the waiting. Pete's reports arrived daily, building a picture Ronald hadn't wanted to see. Bernard Bliss had met Katrina during her modeling days in London, before Ronald. Their relationship had never ended. It had just gone underground, hidden behind business trips and design consultations. The hotel staff at the Ritz knows them well, Pete reported. Regular guests in the Piccadilly suite. Always the same dates, coinciding with Katrina's business trips. Ronald started a spreadsheet, documenting every detail. Dates, times, locations, bank transfers, phone records. Building a case that would stand up in court because somewhere in his shocked numbness, a plan was forming. Late one night, he found himself parked outside Pete's office in a rundown part of town. The investigator looked older than Ronald remembered, gray threading his hair, lines carved deep around his eyes. You sure you want to see these? Pete held up a manila envelope. Once you do, there's no going back. Ronald thought of Emma's face when she'd taken the DNA test, of Jason's soccer games and Sophie's artwork proudly displayed on his office wall. Of 18 years of memories built on quicksand. Show me everything. Tuesday morning dawned gray and cold. Ronald sat in his parked car outside the office, staring at the envelope on his passenger seat. His name was printed in block letters, the testing company's logo sharp against the white paper. His phone buzzed. A text from Katrina. "Don't forget dinner with the Hendersons tonight. Love you, Ek." The casual endearment made his hands shake as he picked up the envelope. Inside were 3 separate reports, each one a death sentence to his family as he knew it. Test subject A. Emma Terry, probability of paternity, 0%. Test subject B. Jason Terry, probability of paternity, 0%. Test subject C. Sophie Terry, probability of paternity, 0%. The scientific certainty was almost elegant in its cruelty. 3 children. 3 zeros. No margin for error, no room for doubt. His phone buzzed again. Pete this time. "Got the London surveillance photos. You need to see these." The office passed in a blur. Ronald delegated his meetings to Arnold, citing a migraine. In the privacy of his office, he opened Pete's encrypted email. The photos were high quality, taken by a professional. Katrina and Bernard at various London locations. Intimate dinners, secret meetings, stolen moments that spanned years. In each one, they looked comfortable together. Familiar. Like a real couple. "There's more," Pete's note read. "Bliss has been married the whole time. Wife's name is Victoria. Old money family. They have houses in Belgravia and the Cotswolds. No children." Ronald's computer pinged with another message. This one contained bank statements, property records, travel documents. A paper trail of deception spanning nearly 2 decades. "The trust funds are substantial," Pete wrote. 7 figures each, managed by a private Swiss bank. All set to transfer on Emma's 18th birthday. But here's the thing. Bliss structured them through his company. If his assets freeze, the implication was clear. Ronald reached for his phone, then stopped. He needed legal counsel first. Everything by the book. His corporate attorney, Billy Walls, agreed to meet him for lunch at a discreet restaurant in Bellevue, far from their usual haunts. "This is comprehensive," Billy said, paging through the files. "The DNA tests alone would be enough, but this level of financial deception, have you confronted her?" "Not yet." "Don't. We need to secure your assets first. Joint accounts, property titles, everything." Billy pulled out a legal pad. "Washington's a community property state, but with this level of fraud..." They spent 2 hours planning, strategizing. By the time Ronald left, he had a clear path forward. First, protect the money. Then, gather more evidence. Finally, spring the trap. That evening, he watched his family over dinner. The family that had never really been his. Sophie chattering about her art project, Jason describing a goal he'd scored at practice, Emma pushing food around her plate in silence. "The DNA results came back," he said casually. "All clear. No health concerns." Emma's fork clattered against her plate. When he met her eyes, he saw the same knowledge there that had been haunting him. She knew. She'd always known. After dinner, he retrieved a bottle of scotch from his office and opened Pete's latest email. More photos, more evidence. Bernard and Katrina entering the Ritz. Leaving high-end restaurants. Always careful, but not careful enough. One photo caught his attention. Bernard holding a young Emma's hand outside Harrods, Katrina beside them. Emma couldn't have been more than 5. The betrayal went back further than he'd imagined. His phone lit up with a text from Pete. Victoria Bliss's lawyer called. She knows something's up. Started asking questions about her husband's finances. Another piece clicked into place. If Victoria Bliss divorced her husband, his assets would freeze, including those trust funds Katrina was counting on. Ronald poured another drink and started making calls. By morning, he had appointments with his bank, his investment advisor, and his lawyer. The trap was nearly ready. The next weeks passed in a carefully orchestrated dance. Ronald maintained his routine work, family dinners, Jason's soccer games, while systematically preparing for the explosion to come. Billy Walls proved invaluable, working through nights to document everything. "We need to be surgical about this," he advised during a late-night strategy session. "One wrong move, and she could claim you violated community property laws." Ronald nodded, spreading bank statements across Billy's desk. What about the children's accounts? Set up new ones in your name only. We'll transfer everything once we file. But the timing has to be perfect. They worked methodically, building a fortress around Ronald's assets. New accounts were opened, old ones prepared for freezing. Every conversation with Katrina was recorded, every email saved. Pete's surveillance operation in London yielded more gold. Got them on video entering the Ritz, he reported. Clear footage of them discussing the trust funds in the hotel bar. Victoria Bliss's lawyers will love this. Have they filed for divorce yet? Not yet, but it's coming. Her investigators are good. They've found the offshore accounts. Ronald thought of Katrina's words to Emma. Bernard Bliss can give us everything we've ever wanted. The irony was bitter. At home, the pressure built. Emma avoided his eyes at breakfast, spent more time alone in her room. During one of Jason's soccer games, Ronald overheard her on the phone. Mom's planning something. I can't. I won't do this to him. No, you don't understand. He wanted to confront her, to say he knew everything. But Billy's warnings held him back. Everything had to be perfect. The pieces fell into place one by one. Bank accounts secured. Assets documented. Evidence gathered. Pete's surveillance photos showed Bernard Bliss arguing with his wife outside their Belgravia home, the beginning of the end. Victoria's lawyers contacted me, Pete reported. They want copies of everything. Ronald sat in his home office, listening to the familiar sounds of his family's evening routine. Sophie practicing piano now that Emma was done. Jason shouting about dinner. Katrina's heels clicking on hardwood floors. All of it a lie. Every moment, every memory, tainted by deception. His phone buzzed, an email from Victoria Bliss's lawyers. They were moving forward with divorce proceedings. Bernard's assets would be frozen within days. Perfect timing, Billy said when Ronald called. We're ready on our end. All the paperwork's prepared. Ronald looked at the family photo on his desk, the last Christmas they'd spent together, though Katrina didn't know it yet. How long? File first thing Monday. The temporary restraining order on the accounts will hit before the banks open. She won't know what hit her. That weekend, Ronald watched his family with new eyes. Katrina's casual touches, her practice smiles, the way Emma flinched when her mother hugged her. The trust funds waiting to mature, the escape plan 18 years in the making, all of it about to implode. He recorded every conversation, saved every text. Evidence mounting like a tsunami about to break. Sunday night, Katrina kissed him goodbye. Early flight tomorrow. Back Thursday. London. MMM. The Ashworth project needs finalizing. One last lie for the record. One last piece of evidence for the lawyers. Ronald sat in his office long after the house went quiet, listening to Emma's muffled crying through the air vent. Soon, the truth would shatter their perfect illusion. But first, he had to spring the trap. Money moved between accounts. Documents were notarized. Lawyers stood ready. The perfect family was about to implode, and Ronald Terry was going to make sure he controlled the blast radius. The autumn morning felt crisp and clear as Ronald adjusted his tie, briefcase in hand. To any observer, it looked like a typical Tuesday. Another day at the office for a successful tech executive. Katrina sipped her coffee at the kitchen counter, scrolling through her phone. Don't forget I'm flying to London tomorrow, she said, not looking up. The Ashworth project needs finalizing. Ronald's smile never wavered. Of course. How could I forget? He waited until she disappeared upstairs before placing his briefcase on the kitchen table. Inside was everything he'd prepared over the last months. A thick manila envelope containing DNA test results, bank statements, surveillance photos, and divorce papers. Next to it, he placed a USB drive containing video footage from Pete's investigation. The note he'd written was simple, devastating in its brevity. Your lover's wife found out everything. He's being divorced and his assets are frozen. I've already secured mine. Enjoy the streets. His phone buzzed, Pete calling from London. Victoria Bliss's lawyers filed the papers an hour ago. Bernard's assets are frozen. He's trying to access the trust funds, but it's too late. Perfect timing. Ronald glanced at his watch. How did he take it? Not well. Started ranting about calling Katrina, warning her. Victoria's lawyers shut that down fast. They've confiscated his phones, computers, everything. And the evidence we sent? Victoria's going nuclear. Her family's old money, old connections. Bernard won't recover from this. Ronald heard Katrina's heels clicking on the stairs. Gotta go. Keep me posted. She appeared in her designer suit, laptop bag over her shoulder. Early meeting with clients. Don't wait up tonight. Wouldn't dream of it. He kissed her cheek, noting the expensive perfume, the one she wore for her London trips. Have a great day, darling. The moment her car disappeared down the driveway, Ronald sent a pre-written email to Arnold Brock, taking a personal day. Family matter. Then he drove to the coffee shop across town, opened his laptop, and waited. The security cameras he'd installed captured everything. At 9:47 a.m., Katrina returned home, presumably having forgotten something. The kitchen camera showed her freezing at the sight of the envelope and USB drive. Her hands shook as she opened the DNA results. Papers scattered across the marble countertop as she frantically dug through the evidence. Photos of her secret meetings with Bernard, bank statements showing his transfers, transcripts of recorded conversations. Her phone rang repeatedly. London numbers. Bernard's office, his cell phone, his home. All going straight to voicemail. At 10:15, she called her bank. Ronald imagined the conversation as she discovered their joint accounts frozen, assets transferred, credit cards canceled. The camera caught her collapse into a kitchen chair, mascara running down her cheeks. Emma arrived home first after school. The cameras caught their confrontation. You knew? Katrina's voice cracked. You told him? I didn't have to. Emma stood tall, chin raised. He figured it out himself. He heard you that night, talking about using him until the trust funds matured. Everything I did was for you. For all of you. No, Mom. Everything you did was for yourself. Jason and Sophie arrived together. The cameras captured their shock, their confusion, their tears as the truth emerged. Emma wrapped her arms around her siblings while Katrina paced, still trying desperately to reach Bernard. Ronald's phone buzzed with updates from London. Victoria Bliss's lawyers had moved fast, freezing not just Bernard's personal accounts, but his company assets as well. The trust funds, tied to company stock, were worthless. At 4:30 p.m., he drove home. The house was silent except for muffled crying from upstairs. Evidence scattered across the kitchen table, Katrina's coffee cup still half full, lipstick staining the rim. He found her in their bedroom, throwing clothes into suitcases. How dare you? She snarled. After everything I've done for this family. Ronald's voice was ice. The children aren't mine, Katrina. 18 years of lies. Did you ever love me at all? Love? She laughed bitterly. Love doesn't pay for private schools and lake houses. Bernard promised us everything. How's that working out? Her phone buzzed, another London number. Her face crumpled as it went to voicemail. He'll fix this. He has to. Bernard's finished. His wife's family has connections with the Home Office. He'll be lucky to keep his passport. Ronald straightened his tie. The guest room's made up. You can stay there until the divorce is final. After that, I hear there are some affordable apartments in Tacoma. The next weeks unfolded like a slow-motion car crash. Katrina ricocheted between rage and desperation as her carefully constructed world collapsed. Bernard's lawyers sent a terse email. Mr. Bliss is unable to provide further assistance due to ongoing legal proceedings. All communications must go through counsel. The offshore accounts froze. Credit cards declined. The interior design clients she bragged about turned out to be mostly fictional covers for her London trips. You can't do this to me, she screamed during one particularly volatile evening. I made you. You were nothing before me. Ronald looked up from his laptop, where he was reviewing settlement offers with Billy. No, Katrina. You just made me think I was nothing. Big difference. The children processed the truth differently. Jason threw himself into soccer, channeling his anger into aggressive plays that worried his coach. Sophie stopped painting, her art room door locked for days. Emma became their rock, gathering her siblings in her room each night. Piano music drifted through the house. No more Chopin, but harder pieces. Beethoven's Storms and Mozart's Fury. I don't understand, Sophie sobbed one evening, curled up in Ronald's home office. Why didn't she love us enough to stay? Your mother loves what you represent, Ronald said carefully. Status. Success. But that's not real love, sweetheart. Are you going to send us away? Jason's voice cracked. Now that you know we're not. Listen to me. Ronald gathered them close. DNA doesn't make a father. 18 years of soccer games and recitals and art shows, that's what makes a father. You're my kids. Nothing changes that. Katrina grew increasingly desperate as her options vanished. She tried manipulating Emma. Talk to Bernard for me. He'll listen to you. You're his daughter. No. Emma's voice was steel. I'm Ronald Terry's daughter. The only thing I got from Bernard Bliss was blood and trust fund that doesn't even exist anymore. The truth spread through their social circle like wildfire. Hannah Hayes arrived one morning with casseroles and righteous anger. I knew something was off about those London trips, she fumed, unpacking groceries. The way she'd brag about her high-end clients, but never showed us any of her work. Arnold proved a steadfast ally, handling Ronald's workload during the worst days. Take whatever time you need, boss. We've got your back. Katrina made one last desperate play, threatening to expose Ronald's harassment to the media. Billy Walls shut that down with brutal efficiency, presenting her lawyers with evidence of her long-term financial fraud. My client is prepared to be very generous, Billy informed her attorney, or very thorough in exposing every detail of your client's deception. Her choice. The children's school counselor suggested family therapy. Ronald agreed immediately, determined to help them process the trauma. During one session, Jason finally voiced what had been haunting him. She told Bernard everything about us, our whole lives. While we didn't even know he existed, that's on her, the therapist said gently. Not you. Not your dad. Ronald's not our dad, Sophie whispered. Biology is just science, Ronald replied. Family is choice. Every day, every moment, I choose you. All of you. The divorce proceedings moved swiftly, Ronald's meticulous preparation leaving Katrina's lawyers little room to maneuver. Billy Walls presented a mountain of evidence. Financial records, surveillance footage, recorded conversations, witness statements from London hotel staff. Your client has two options, Billy informed Katrina's attorney. Accept Mr. Terry's generous settlement offer, or watch every detail of her deception become public record, including her role in Bernard Bliss's financial crimes. Katrina, her designer wardrobe already showing signs of wear, chose the settlement. The lake house sold quickly. Ronald and the children already moved to a comfortable home in Madison Park. The custody hearing proved brief. Arnold and Hannah's testimony about Ronald's dedication to the children carried weight. But it was Emma's statement that sealed it. She stood before the judge, shoulders back, voice clear. Your Honor, I need to tell you about my father. Not Bernard Bliss, he just provided DNA. I mean Ronald Terry, who taught me to ride a bike, who sat through every piano recital, who showed me what real love looks like. Biology doesn't make a family, love does. And no one has loved us more completely, more unselfishly, than our dad. Looking at his daughter, because she was his daughter, DNA be damned. Ronald felt something tight in his chest finally release. The judge's ruling was unequivocal. Full custody to Ronald, with supervised visitation for Katrina at the children's discretion. None of them exercised that option. Katrina's fall from grace proved spectacular. Her former society friends turned their backs. The interior design business, built mostly on deception, collapsed. She moved into a small apartment in Tacoma, taking a job at a furniture store. Bernard Bliss fared no better. Victoria's family connections ensured his downfall was complete. The company board forced him out. His assets remained frozen. The last Ronald heard, he was facing potential criminal charges for financial impropriety. Life slowly rebuilt itself. Emma deferred Juilliard for a year, unwilling to leave her siblings during the transition. She taught piano to local kids, her students' recitals filling their new home with music. Jason's soccer team made state championships. When he scored the winning goal, his first instinct was to search the stands for Ronald's face. Sophie started painting again, her new works darker but somehow deeper. 1 year later, they sat together at Emma's concert with the Seattle Symphony. She'd chosen Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2, a piece about survival, about triumph over darkness. Ronald watched his daughter's fingers fly over the keys, Jason and Sophie beside him, and thought about the word perfect. Their old life had been perfect on the surface, brittle as glass. This new life was stronger, forged in truth and chosen love. "Dad," Sophie whispered during the applause. "Are we going to be okay?" Ronald squeezed her hand, watching Emma take her bows. "We already are, sweetheart. We already are." The next morning, he drove them to school as usual. Jason had a math test. Sophie needed to finish an art project. Emma was meeting her youth orchestra group. Normal moments. Real moments. Perfect in their imperfection. Katrina's betrayal had shattered their illusion of a perfect family. But from those broken pieces, they'd built something stronger. A family bound not by blood or obligation, but by choice. By love that had been tested in fire and emerged unbreakable. Ronald Terry had lost the family he thought he had. But he'd kept the family that mattered. The one he'd built through 18 years of soccer games and piano recitals, of homework help and midnight fevers, of quiet moments and loud celebrations. Biology didn't make a father. Love did. And love, real love, was stronger than any lies. Epilogue. 5 years later. The Seattle Symphony Hall buzzed with anticipation. Ronald Terry sat in the front row, pride swelling in his chest as Emma took her place at the grand piano. At 22, she'd become the youngest featured soloist in the symphony's history. Her decision to defer Juilliard had led her down an unexpected path, earning her degree from the University of Washington School of Music while building a reputation as a rising star in Seattle's classical music scene. Jason, now 20, leaned forward in his seat. He'd driven up from Stanford for the weekend, where he was on a soccer scholarship studying computer science. Like father, like son, even if not by blood. Sophie, 17 and sporting vibrant blue hair, sketched in her notebook. Her art had evolved into a powerful medium. She'd already received early acceptance to Rhode Island School of Design. "Hard to believe how far we've come," Arnold Brock whispered from Ronald's right. He and Hannah had remained steadfast friends through everything. Their support during the darkest days had forged a bond deeper than mere friendship. Hannah squeezed Ronald's hand. "Have you heard the latest about Katrina?" He had. News traveled fast in Seattle's social circles, even 5 years later. Katrina Buckley, she'd reverted to her maiden name, had hit rock bottom after the divorce. The small apartment in Tacoma had led to an even smaller one in Olympia. The furniture store job hadn't lasted. Her attitude and sense of entitlement had seen to that. She'd cycled through retail positions, each one less prestigious than the last. Her latest attempt at redemption, trying to publish a tell-all book about her life with Bernard Bliss, had backfired spectacularly. Victoria Bliss's lawyers had shut it down with ruthless efficiency, threatening legal action for violating the non-disclosure agreement Katrina had signed as part of Bernard's settlement. The last anyone heard, she was working as a shop assistant in a mall boutique in Portland, her designer wardrobe long since sold, her modeling days a distant memory. She tried reaching out to the children on their birthdays, sending cards that went unopened, leaving voicemails that went unreturned. Bernard Bliss's fall had been even more dramatic. Victoria's family connections had ensured his complete destruction in London's business and social circles. The financial investigations had uncovered decades of fraud beyond his affair with Katrina. He'd faced criminal charges, eventually pleading guilty to reduced charges in exchange for cooperation. 3 years in a minimum security prison had aged him considerably. Now released, he lived in a small flat in Manchester, surviving on a fraction of his former wealth. Victoria's divorce settlement had left him with barely enough to maintain a modest lifestyle. His attempts to rebuild his business reputation met with closed doors and turned backs. The Bliss family name, once respected in London's tech industry, had become synonymous with scandal. "Dad," Sophie's voice brought Ronald back to the present. "Remember that painting I did? The one of our Sunday breakfast?" Of course. It had hung in their old house, capturing a moment from their previous life. "I sold it to the Whitney Museum. They're featuring it in an exhibition about family dynamics and identity." Ronald hugged her close. "That's incredible, sweetheart." The lights dimmed. Emma's fingers hovered over the keys. She'd chosen Beethoven's Emperor Concerto, a piece about triumph, about overcoming. As the first notes filled the hall, Ronald thought about the journey that had brought them here. The scandal had rocked Seattle's social scene. Some had distanced themselves, uncomfortable with the messy reality beneath the perfect surface. But true friends had emerged stronger. Arnold had promoted Ronald to Chief Technology Officer last year, the company thriving under their partnership. Hannah had helped the children through the transition, her background in child psychology proving invaluable. The new house in Madison Park had become a real home, filled with music and art and laughter. No more pretense, no more secrets. Family dinners were louder now, everyone talking over each other, sharing stories and plans and dreams. Holiday gatherings included Arnold and Hannah, their children becoming like cousins to Emma, Jason, and Sophie. During intermission, Ronald checked his phone. A text from his girlfriend, Sarah, a widow he'd met through Jason's soccer league 2 years ago. She understood broken trust and rebuilding, having lost her husband to a secret addiction. Their relationship moved at its own pace, built on honesty and shared values. She'd be joining them for dinner after the concert. Jason nudged him, grinning. "Think Emma will play that piece at the wedding?" "What wedding?" "Come on, Dad. We've all seen the ring box in your desk." Ronald smiled. His children had welcomed Sarah into their lives, recognizing how she brought out the best in him. No rushing, no pressure, just genuine care and understanding. The second half began. Emma's playing soared through the hall, years of dedication and passion evident in every note. In the green room afterward, surrounded by admirers, she broke away to hug Ronald tight. "I got the offer," she whispered. "Associate professor of piano at UW. I'm staying in Seattle. More celebrations. More joy." Later, at their favorite Italian restaurant, Ronald looked around the table. Jason animatedly discussing his latest coding project with Arnold. Sophie showing Hannah sketches for her next series. Emma and Sarah deep in conversation about music education programs. Love, trust, and honest connection. A toast. Arnold raised his glass. "To the Terry family. Proof that what breaks us doesn't define us." "To choices," Emma added. "And the family we build." The next morning, a package arrived from London, newspaper clippings about Bernard Bliss's latest failed venture, sent by Victoria's lawyers who kept tabs on her ex-husband. He was living in a bedsit now, his Manchester flat sold to pay legal debts. The mighty had fallen far. Another envelope bore a Portland postmark. Inside, a tear-stained letter from Katrina, begging to see the children. Sophie threw it away unopened. "We already have all the family we need," she said firmly. Ronald's phone buzzed, a group text from his children. "Emma, dinner at my place Sunday? Breaking in the new piano." Jason, "Only if Dad makes his lasagna." Sophie, "I'm bringing my new paintings." Sarah, "Need help with dinner prep?" Simple moments. Real connections. No pretense, no hidden agendas. Later that week, Ronald visited the cemetery where his parents were buried. "You'd be proud," he told their headstones. "Your grandchildren, they're extraordinary. Not because of their talents, but because of their hearts, their strength, their capacity for love." He placed fresh flowers and drove home, where Sophie was teaching Sarah to paint. Jason was video chatting about his latest soccer game, and Emma's piano music filled the air. The perfect family portrait had shattered years ago, but from those broken pieces, they'd built something real, something unbreakable. The evening news sometimes carried stories about Bernard Bliss, his failed attempts at redemption, his descent into obscurity. Occasionally, someone mentioned seeing Katrina, her beauty faded, working retail jobs in Portland malls. Their choices, their deceptions, had cost them everything. But in a warm house in Madison Park, surrounded by music and art and honest love, Ronald Terry had found something far more valuable than perfection. He'd found truth, reality, a family bound not by blood or obligation, but by choice, by love tested in fire and proven unshakable. Emma's piano music drifted through the house, Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major, the piece she'd played in that other life, but different now, stronger, more real, like them all. Sarah came to stand beside him at the window. "Penny for your thoughts?" Ronald smiled, watching Sophie chase Jason around the yard with a paintbrush, their laughter carrying through the evening air. Just thinking about perfection and how overrated it is, and how sometimes you have to lose everything to find what really matters. Inside, Emma started a new piece, something she composed herself, weaving together classical structure and modern emotion. The past and future, pain and healing, loss and love. Their story, set to music. Perfect wasn't a word Ronald used anymore. Reality, with all its messy, beautiful complexity, was far better. 5 years had changed them all. Katrina and Bernard had lost everything in their pursuit of perfection. But the Terry family, bound by love, choice, and shared survival, had gained something far more precious: truth, trust, and the unshakable knowledge that Rayall family transcends blood. The sun set over Lake Washington, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Another day ending, another beginning tomorrow. Life wasn't perfect, but it was real. And real, Ronald had learned, was better than perfect every time. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.